5 Simsbury residents were recently recognized at the first 60 over 60 Connecticut Awards ceremony. These awards, created by Duncaster, honor Connecticut citizens age 60 and more who continue to make a difference in the lives of others and their communities. This is the first year the awards were presented. Duncaster began their search for 60 individuals who are making a difference in our community in January. They received nominations from business associates, friends, family, and people who admire the accomplishments of those in their communities. Among those chosen for the first class of 60 over 60 Connecticut were people who dedicated their lives to public service, authors, artists, poets, volunteers, caregivers, healthcare professionals, and executives with some of the state's most influential institutions. Those chosen are pioneers and changemakers. They broke rules. They made new ones. They did things faster, and they kick-started change. They made history, and they honored it. The recipients came from 25 towns across the state. With us today is one of those 60 people, Simsbury resident Mary-Margaret Girgenti. Welcome, Mary-Margaret.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So you have been a very active volunteer for quite a number of organizations. You had one career, and now you've sort of gone on to another. Tell us about that.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Perhaps not the way that I do. I've spent more than 4 decades working in geriatrics and elderly services. And the first job that I had in geriatrics was a needs assessment, and it was an assessment of elderly needs was what the town wanted. But there was an active resident there who said, no, it's needs and abilities. And so it's a recognition of the fact that throughout the life cycle, we need to do, use our abilities in whatever way we can.
Okay.
So, I've been a volunteer. Presently, I'm volunteering with the Food Share program, with the Choices program, which helps individuals who are Medicare age to figure out what their health insurance needs are, and also with the Senior Job Bank. So that's those are the groups I'm volunteering with, and then we also do some volunteering at the House of Bread. So it kind of, there are lots of things. The good part is that, it helps you stay involved, and each time you do something, you just learn from the people you're with. It's that sense of engagement and, just gratitude because you learn something new each time you do it.
Yeah, my mother always said no knowledge is wasted.
Yeah. And it may be just the attitude of the person whom you're talking with. And it's a very positive kind of thing.
Why do you think this work is important? I mean, clearly you're passionate about it, so why?
Why do I think it's important? I think it's important because when I was in graduate school close to 50 years ago, I thought we would have health care for all before I finished graduate school. Can't believe that.
Before you finished graduate school.
Right. And so here we are, 40-something years later, and no, that hasn't happened. When I was working, one of my first jobs after I had a child was in West Hartford at the Senior Job Bank. I was there when it was created. And I've served in a variety of, I've been on their board and done all kinds of things with them. And that went on for about, the job bank went on for 35 years.
Yes.
And then it stopped. And there was that period of respite, about 5 or 6 years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And people suddenly realized again, there is a need. And about 3 years ago, it was reinvigorated, reestablished, and now I work as the coordinator for the town of Simsbury, which means I do the interviews and that kind of thing.
The interviews of the people who are
seeking employment, and mostly it's part-time employment.
Right.
But recognizing that something. That there was a void without the opportunity to have this there, because many people have so many skills when they retire. They want to be able to use those skills. They may do things for money, but they also do it for involvement. And so many people require short-term or part-time or intermittent kind of help. And it's a great way of getting it. And We also make sure all of our people are bonded and security checked. So
Good
all
idea.
of those kinds of things are done. So that's a fun kind of
So
thing
the job
to
bank
do.
is like an employment agency
It
for
is.
people who
Yes, over 50. And supposedly, I guess that makes you a senior. So, some of us are a little bit confused as to what it really takes to become a senior.
Well, it keeps shifting. I heard
know,
70
I
is the
know.
new 40.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm liking this a lot.
Yeah. For those of us who work a lot longer than supposedly, when 65 was the age of retirement.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
You're also very involved in the SNAP program, the program, the government program that used to be called food stamps.
Right. I do. I take applications for that program as well. So, opportunities to realize the variety of needs that people have. And because my degree is in social work, all of the things that I thought we might not have to have at this point.
You thought we'd be done with that.
I had hoped there would be opportunities and that our needs wouldn't be increasing. Yeah.
So you've had a really interesting front row seat on the way things have changed, on the way people look at the aging process, on what we need.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the shifting attitudes towards older adults, because that's really what the 60 over 60 Connecticut Awards are all about.
Yeah, I again, going back to what I started with initially, that woman who 40-something years ago said, talk about abilities as well, and to recognize that our abilities don't just drop when you get to a certain age.
There's not an expiration date on ability.
Right, exactly. And I was at the Area Agency on Aging a number of years ago, and we had a grant that was to talk about, again, opportunities for employment, for volunteerism, for education, that many people kind of felt there was a stagnation after retirement. My identity
people who were
gone.
who were getting older.
Yeah, my identity I've lost my identity because for so many people, I think particularly at that point it was males, your identity was tied up in what you did for a living.
Absolutely.
And then suddenly you did not exist. So we had an opportunity with that grant to explore throughout the region. It was the Greater Hartford region, 38 towns. What were some of the things that could be done? And kind of affirming, again, that aging, there is a number, but that doesn't have anything to do with ability. And, you have to find the thing that makes you go. What is the thing that is important to you? How does your identity get going? So we've changed substantially. 60 over 60. I was thinking, well, why isn't 70 over 70? Or how about 80?
Because I don't want to do that. That's just too many people.
But, when you think about the number of people who live to be centenarians.
Absolutely.
And some of them who just have tremendous capacities throughout the life cycle, to recognize all of those kinds of things and to realize that we all have opportunities for doing something new. And I think, having novelty in our lives is an important thing. Taking classes, I think this region does a good job with helping people with Seabury sponsors the ALP program, and I take classes at the University of Hartford, the President's College, but then the opportunities at the community colleges, et cetera, so that we all have opportunities. And, one of the fun jobs I had, too, was teaching at the community college, where you do get to see a wide variety of people who, are at various stages in their lives and who are exploring other things that are out there. So things to make us cognitively it's appropriate.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because my next question, which I wrote before we had this conversation, was, I know what you do in these causes. What do these causes do for you?
Oh, well, first of all, it gives you gratitude. First of all, you wake up each morning and you have something that you do. You're grateful to have the opportunity to be healthy enough to do the things that you do. You're grateful to have the interactions with the people who are around you. My feeling strongly is about engagement in whatever way, whether it's, in my neighborhood, whether it's just walking around the block with the dog and talking to everybody who's just moved in. It's
human interaction.
Human interaction. And I think very often as older adults, we can get sequestered in a way that causes an isolation and a withdrawal. And I think it's really important. And when you and I talked on the phone, I said, I think intergenerational programming is such an important thing because it's very easy for us to start thinking only about ourselves. We have the ability to make our lives get smaller, but we also have the ability to enlarge the circle around us.
And I also think that what I was calling in our conversation when we were preparing for this interview, generation mixing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot harder to put a stereotype on a group, a generation, if you know the individuals. Yeah. And I feel like that kind of interaction says, no, they're not that much different than me.
That's right. That's right. I think it's very important to hear what other people say and to understand where they're coming from. And, you can be in awe of some of the younger people, kids in high school, and you listen and you say, my Lord, I think even when I graduated from college, I probably would not be this articulate.
Oh, yeah.
And it's cool. It's really, really great. And openness to it. I think we can't be afraid of putting ourselves on the line and even challenging. I have been known to challenge people and their perspectives. But it's good because it causes a real dialogue to occur. And I think that's what's so important.
And the challenging part, I read an interesting article that said that the best thing for your own creativity is to challenge, is to get to the point where you're uncomfortable with new knowledge and learn to adapt that. That's actually healthy for the brain.
Yeah, it is. And certainly, I guess one of the things we're all concerned about is the brain and, all of the synaptic connections and all of the things that are being done
I don't want those to slow down.
No, I don't want them to slow down either. But, we have opportunities. And I think the more we realize that we have opportunities, the better off we are.
Seize them if you know they're there.
Yeah.
So the awards were the first time presented. What did you think when you got the notification?
What is this all about?
The 60 over 60.
I have no idea. This thing came in the mail, and I thought, so I had to pick up the phone and call and say, what are you talking about?
And who are you talking to?
Yes. Well, that was even more interesting. Yeah. It was one of my former colleagues and, another person who doesn't always take the easiest path, and we would challenge each other. And he said, oh, I never, ever thought you would know that it was me.
This is your nominator. Oh.
Yeah. So it was quite funny. And he was, because we challenged each other. I was there before he came, and we kept on.
Well, you can nominate him next time.
I will. Yeah.
Start thinking, because we've already started planning for the 2018
I don't
awards.
know if he's made the age cutoff, though. I'm not positive. Which he kindly said to me, which is very nice. But
yes, indeed. You didn't make the cutoff. But start thinking, because we're going to start putting out requests probably towards the end of the year. It went over so well.
Well, I think the good part about it is we learned to say old, we learn to say age, and there are so many 4-letter words that we're very comfortable with, but there are 3-letter words we just don't have any.
Old and age.
Yes, yeah.
I love that.
We don't have any comfort with them, and
well, hopefully the awards say it's good. It's good. It's something you've earned as being around for a while.
Yeah, and it's you should be, again, celebrating the fact of it.
Absolutely.
And we're lucky.
We are lucky. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I really appreciate it. 5 Simsbury residents were recently recognized at the first 60 over 60 Connecticut Awards ceremony. With us today is one of those 60 people, Simsbury resident Kathleen Miller. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hi, Andrea.
So, your nominator spent a lot of time talking about the fact that you hike. You are a hiker. That's your passion. How did you originally get involved in hiking?
Well, I've always been interested in the outdoors. I grew up in camping with my family and that sort of thing. And even as a young adult, I sought that out after college. I remember joining the Sierra Club at the suggestion of my brother because none of my friends were interested in the outdoors, and I wanted to find people that were. So I joined the Sierra Club, and that's where I met my husband. And that was something that we shared, that love of the outdoors and the physical exercise and the sense of adventure, going places you haven't been.
Talk a little bit about what that does for you, what being out on those hikes does for you.
I think, you gain a sense of renewal, a sense of getting away from your everyday life and maybe the cares of your work life, that sort of thing.
And the cell phones.
Yes, but even before cell phones, you got away and you got outdoors, you saw new things. Even just the physical exertion, I think, leaves you with a good feeling about yourself. But it's just nice to get out away from things and you hear the birds and hear the wind in the trees. So I'm pretty much a lifelong hiker. When I was raising my family, my husband and I didn't have time to do the big hikes.
Yes.
But we took the kids with us, and I always walked my dog, that sort of thing. So it's been something
are
I
your
continue.
Children as involved in hiking as you are?
They love the outdoors. They're not as involved because they're involved in their family and career at this point. But I think they appreciate it. I know my son, as his kids are getting older, they're going camping and doing more of that sort of thing. So.
Tell us a hiking story. Tell us about some of your more memorable hikes.
One of my more memorable hikes was probably a trip maybe 3 years ago with the Appalachian Mountain Club to Colorado, where we summited the second highest peak in the lower 48, which is Mount Elbert. And that was quite a thrill for me. I'd never been over 14,000 feet before.
Climbing? I mean, isn't that
No, I call it, the informal term is peak bagging. Peak bagging, peak, as in the peak, the summit.
Okay.
The difference to me is that it's not technical. It's pretty much everything I do doesn't involve ropes and all that sort of thing. I think of as mountain climbing.
Okay.
Not Mount Everest, the ice axe and the ropes
and the pitons and all that stuff.
Right. Pretty much, there are trails to many of these places, and certainly to Mount Elbert, there's a trail that goes all the way to the top. So it's a matter of will to do it, preparation, and just getting out there.
So I know that you have conquered all of New England's highest mountains.
Not quite.
Yeah, but you're on a quest. Talk about that.
I'm on a quest. I've done the 48 highest in New Hampshire, for which Appalachian Mountain Club has a list for which they give a little patch. So I've done those. I finished those in 2013. And
how many mountains is that?
That's 48. Those are the 48 in New Hampshire that are over 4,000 feet, including Mount Washington, which is the highest in New England. Then there's another list that's the 67 over 4,000 feet in New England, so that includes Maine and Vermont.
Okay.
And I just finished that
You finished
months
that
ago.
one?
Yes. And the next list are the 100 highest in New England, and I have 15 left. So some of those are trailless peaks, so there's a little bit more of a challenge. So you're constantly sort of pushing it a little further.
And your role as a leader for the Appalachian Mountain Club and the Connecticut, you get it right, the Connecticut Hiking Alliance. How did that come about?
Well, I'm widowed. My husband passed away about 7 years ago, and so he was my hiking partner. And when he was gone, I found solace in the outdoors. We had been members of the Appalachian Mountain Club, but I started hiking with them. They have I was no longer working, so they have some weekday groups. And at that point, I hadn't been on big hikes for quite a while. So I started out doing 3 to 5 mile hikes. Very nice people, and they were very welcoming and warm. And I found, as a new widow, that was my solace in the week, was that couple hours that I spent with these people. I was out of doors, sort of away from everything, including my grief, and people were kind, and those were the good hours of the week. So I thought, well, I'm going to keep doing this. So I did, and people were encouraging, and one thing led to another. So I kept doing more and more of it. And
so when you lead hikes, what does that involve? Do you help people get prepared?
Okay. The Appalachian Mountain Club gives a lot of latitude to hike leaders. We do receive a formal hike leader training. It's group dynamics, some outdoor skills and first aid.
Yes, that's a good thing.
Yes, it's a good thing. And hopefully you don't need it, but you've got it if you need it. And then, you welcome people at the trailhead, you plan the hikes,
So they're following you, essentially.
them. They're following you. Sometimes some of them, you're trying to keep up with them. It depends on the group. But it's always a lot of fun. It's social. You get a little exercise, you're out in fresh air, and, oftentimes after the hikes we enjoy a little bit of a social activity. People might go out to lunch or out to dinner, so it becomes social as well. So
you talked a little bit about the love of the outdoors, and there is what I guess is a new trend called forest bathing. And what do you think of that? What do you think of that whole experience?
Yes, I think I've been doing that for a long time.
Without a name.
Without that name. And I recommend outdoors to everyone.
Explain what the forest bathing
is. I think the idea, as I understand it, is that you go into the woods. Now, it doesn't have to be a national forest. It doesn't have to be a national park. You can go out in Simsbury into Stratton Brook Park,
yes,
which I do nearly every day, and walk along a nice flat path, and you're surrounded by pine trees and the sound of the birds and, the smell of the leaves.
So it's bathing in the experience of the forest. You don't get wet.
No, you don't get wet.
Okay.
If it rains, you get wet.
If it rains, you get wet. Well, that's a good point.
But I think it's just taking in the scent and the sounds and just the atmosphere of being outdoors and the green. It's almost like sometimes you can feel this green glow coming onto you.
Really?
That's how I experience it.
You mentioned earlier that hiking and being outdoors has always been important to you. I think you're getting about to tell me why, based on what you said before about the experience.
For me, it's somewhat spiritual, and I think as a child, I loved the outdoors too. I love nature. I love to hear the birds. A good morning to me is one of the first thing I hear is a bird singing, and. I treasure those moments to be out of doors and to, be away from the hustle bustle, and you do come with a sense of renewal.
Yep. Well, I'm an indoor person. So what advice would you give to me if I wanted to start? I mean, I'm not going to start going up Mount Washington. How do I start?
Well, you're smart, because there are a lot of people that try to start by Mount Washington. They think this is not for me. No, start small. If you're already a walker, walk. If you're not a walker, get out and walk on the bike trails. There's lots of bike trails.
So start flat is what you're saying.
Start flat. Okay. Yes, start flat and easy. If you don't like the bugs, then don't go on a buggy day. Go on a nice day. Make it start out to where you're enjoying it. You want to enjoy it, and then just go a little further. Go a little farther. Go with people that like to be outdoors. That's always encouraging.
So the social part of it.
The social part of it's always very encouraging.
You sell me on that one.
Yes,
okay.
That's always very encouraging, because what I find is when people are out walking, they laugh, they talk, they share secrets sometimes. It's, that I think that's part of it too for me.
We were noticing the other day, my girlfriend and I were going to McLean, and that people just stop and talk. I mean, that you probably wouldn't on the street, that you have that in common with them.
It's that common interest, I think, that it makes people connect with the outdoors and with each other, other people that love the outdoors.
These awards honored all of us who were accomplishing things over the age of 60. Do you expect that the hiking passion is going to be with you?
Absolutely.
For years and years?
I've hiked with people in their 80s and even up to 90.
Really?
And they can go up those mountains. You don't have to go fast. I told someone that yesterday. I hiked Mount Monadnock in New Hampshire.
Right.
And there was a woman, sitting. She was with some young boys, and they were, of course, way ahead of her. And she was sitting in the shade. It was a hot day. I was a little discouraged, and I said, you don't have to go fast. You just have to keep going, and you can do this.
I think that there's that competitive nature in the workday that makes you think, I got to do this. I got to do this fast. I got to do this good.
Right. And I would say don't do it fast. Do it at your own pace.
You're missing your point if I hear you right.
Correct. Do it at your own pace. You don't have to keep up with everyone else. Pretty much.
It's not a competition.
Well, the saying is hike your own hike.
I like that. So what did you think? Did you think that Cheryl Strayed's book did for hiking?
I loved that book, and if it got people outdoors, I think that's wonderful. And I think she was touching on some of those things I think that I've talked about, where it can be healing, that being in nature. It helps you reconnect with yourself, especially when you're walking by yourself. You hear
a
your
little
own
quiet,
thoughts.
never hurt anybody, right?
Correct. Yes, yes.
So when you're not outdoors and you're indoors, you're working for the town of Simsbury, you're working for the library. Talk a little about that.
Well, I'm also a lifelong volunteer, particularly in the town of Simsbury. I've been a little less active when my husband was ill and just afterwards, but I've been very active in the community, in the schools. When my children both grew up here and went through the schools, so I was very active in the schools. And in the library, volunteer for the Friends of the Library. I love this town. I did, after my husband died, I sold my house and downsized, but I still stayed in.
But you're still in Simsbury.
Still in Simsbury.
So when you found out that you were one of the people that was being honored with the 60 over 60 Connecticut Awards, what was your reaction?
Well, I was surprised, and then when I saw who the other nominees were, I felt humbled to be in their company. And, I have been honored for volunteer things, and so this was a little different to be honored for something I think is just fun.
Well, I think what these honors were in terms of why the committee picked you, it was that you were showing us a lifestyle that it doesn't really matter what age you are. And that was the whole point of the awards.
And I firmly believe that. And, I've been encouraged by other people in my life. I had a dear friend who lived in town who passed away at age 92, and she was still swimming every day until she was almost 90. And I found her inspiring. We used to go to the theater together and so I think, you can look to your elders. And I remember thinking, I want to be like her.
When I grow up, I want to be like her. Well,
Exactly.
that's exactly why we created the awards.
Yes.
Well, Kathleen,
Those are
thank
great.
you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. We've been talking to Kathleen Miller about being outside, about being a 60 over 60 Connecticut nominee and winner. And join us again next time. Thank you for joining us.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.